G'day folks, thanks for joining us again on one of our specials at Too Good Sports. Today we're fortunate enough to have Steve Lee Marquand. I pronounced that right, Steve?
It wasn't too bad.
Mate, famous actor, Australian actor. He's got a filmography stretching back almost 30 years. You must have started when you were 1 year old, Steve.
You're too kind.
Some of the movies, there's too many to list, but Vertical Limits, Kokoda, one of my favourites actually, Red Dog, True Blue, a number of Australian TV shows, including another one of my favourites, Underbelly, Home Away, Blue Heelers, Water Rats, you name it. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. Now, as you can see with Steve there, an avid Panthers supporter. We'll get to that in a minute. Steve, you're originally a Perth boy. Tell us a little bit about your family's journey east. Obviously, that's, especially then, that was absolutely Aussie rules grounds. Still is.
Yeah.
How'd you come about moving over to the other side of the country, mate?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, my mum's West Australian. She was from Perth, and Dad's Victorian, so it's all AFL. When they met, they decided that instead of camping in one of those two states, they'd move far east. So we moved to Castle Hill out in Sydney, in the Bible Belt through there. And I was about 4 or 5, and then I remember I was in year 1 at school, so it must have been 6. I've been there a couple of years, and on a Sunday afternoon, turned on the ABC, and I saw this game of Eastern Suburbs versus St George, and I just watched this game for about 5 minutes, and I said to Mum, what is this? And she looked at it and went, it's rubbish, it's rugby or something, turn that rubbish off. And I was like, no way. I was absolutely hooked, and I watched the rest of the game, and from then on, I've been a rugby league convert, much to both my parents' chagrin.
So you came over, you became indoctrinated in the correct sport, good to see, Steve.
I did.
And first game, East and St George, but you became obviously a Penrith supporter. How'd that come about?
Yeah, it was weird. I actually lived out in Parramatta territory, and I couldn't stand Parramatta maybe because all my friends went for them, and so I sort of wanted to find another team. And Manly, I went for a little while. They were sort of a team that I liked, and then I got because I think my best friend was going for Manly, Matthew Robertson, and then we had a bit of a falling out, and so I went, well, I can't go for Manly anymore, and I can't go for Parramatta. So I sort of looked at who was the team closest to where I was living, and that was Penrith. And they were the Chocolate Soldiers back then. I loved their uniforms, or costumes as we called them. Yeah, so I became a Panthers supporter and haven't looked back.
Yep, they were the Chocolate Soldiers, weren't they?
They were indeed. They were up until they won in 91, their first comp in 91. They were still Chocolate Soldiers then too. Let's
go back those days. Who were the big heroes for you those early days when you started following Penrith, back in the 80s?
Yeah, in the 70s. Well, I sort of followed a lot of guys. I mean, guys like Steve Carter, I suppose, Royce Simmons too, Graham Moran was one of the foundation players, Ross Giggs, Warren Fenton, what's his name, Lou
Zavanovic?
Yeah, that's right, absolutely. Brad Izzard, Jeff Gerard, Johnny Cartwright, all those kind of guys. So they were all featured very heavily.
Yep. They came in about 67, was that correct?
Yeah, 67. I was born 67, funnily enough. So. Same year. Cronulla and Penrith both joined in 67, as did I. So
it was written in the stars. As an actor, I guess you're travelling all of the time, and it'd be difficult at times, especially when you're out of the country or you're in areas where you can't easily get it. How do you keep up with your rugby league fix?
Well, it's obviously a lot easier these days. As now you can get it pretty much anywhere in the world. Obviously, I've got 2 or 3 different ways of watching it, either on my various devices. But yeah, it's just a lot harder. Like when I was shooting Vertical Limit, which you mentioned before, which was 99. The internet was just starting out, but wasn't much league on there. So yeah, that was but that was in the middle of the Super League sort of wars as well. So that was the one season I actually missed most of because I was in New Zealand in some pretty far away places. I couldn't get any access to it. But as I say, the Super League thing, I sort of lost a bit of interest in the league throughout that whole time.
Let's talk about that just briefly, Steve. That was a lot of people, I think, tuned out a little bit.
Yeah,
they were divided. There were 2 comps. It wasn't one strong unified comp. Obviously, Penrith went with Super League.
They did. That's right.
What was your memories and what were your feelings when that happened?
Yeah, look, I wasn't very happy. I didn't want to see a divided comp. You obviously know that neither comp is as strong as as a united comp. So yeah, like you say, I think a lot of people tuned out, and a few of my good rugby league friends kind of tuned out as well. A couple of diehards sort of stuck in there, but I think, anyone who won either of those comps in those years, you sort of go, well, you take it with a grain of salt, you know what I mean? So, yeah. Which I think sorry, Karen.
No, look, for the Panther boys too, and the fans, a big loss during that war, Fittler.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Freddie. I mean, he was amazing. That's when he went over to the Larde Sippers in the east. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And, we lost Gould to them as well. But, yeah, it was a big loss. But I think he would have maybe gone anyway at some stage. I'm not sure if he would have been a one-club man or not, Freddie Fittler. But it was a big loss, obviously. He played nearly 200 games, I think, for the Panthers. So.
Yeah. Look, had some glory years, and this year we'll talk about in a little bit more detail shortly. But I guess when you think of the glory years for Penrith, we were fortunate enough to have Scott Sattler back on our show a little while ago, and the inevitable question was the 2003 and the tackle on Todd Byrne. There was 91 and 2003 that comes to mind. You could actually argue 90 as well, because it was a breakthrough year, wasn't it? When you
they made the GF, that's right, against Canberra. Yep.
But out of those three, or those two in particular, 91 and 2003, Steve, if we had a time machine, you could go back for the day and enjoy the day. Which one would you pick and why?
I think you've got to take the first one, 91. I was living in Penrith at the time too. We had a share house on Lethbridge Street, which is one of the main streets through Penrith proper. And so we set up the front, the lounge room in the front yard. So we set up the TV, had a lounge there. And so as everyone was walking past, of course it was Penrith playing, but they would stop. So we started off with the three housemates there. By sort of 5, 6 o'clock, we had maybe 50 or 60 people, just random strangers, would just stop because the game was so full on and exciting, and everyone got caught up in it. And so, we wound up watching the whole thing with the whole neighbourhood from the front lawn of the house. So, and that was the first one that we won. So I think it's hard to go past. Obviously, 03 was just sensational. We were underdogs. We were tipped to get the spoon at the end of 02.
That's right.
And we tipped to lose the GF, to get smashed, and we just kept winning, even though we were minor premiers that year. So, but I think if I had to choose the two, I'd take 91.
Going back to 91, you mentioned like the crowds going by, and all of a sudden you end up with a heap of people there. What was the effect on the community leading into it, and then afterwards?
It was absolutely phenomenal. It was just a little aside to that one funny thing that did happen was, I believe Panthers got robbed, was held up on the Monday after the grand final, because they knew that the Panthers, the big club, they knew that the takings out there were going to be unbelievable. And apparently they got away with it, as far as I can remember, with quite a few $100,000. Look, it was great. It was just fantastic. I mean, Penrith it's a pretty strong community anyway, but you could just sort of feel like, for the next week, there were just Penrith flags everywhere, just chocolate soldier brown and white flags everywhere, people talking about it, people who had no interest in rugby league whatsoever, all of a sudden were experts and wanted to talk about it. It was phenomenal. You could really, really feel the whole community just gelling. It was amazing. It was amazing.
Let's fast forward to this year. A lot of tipsters didn't have the Panthers in their 8, let alone to be where they are. I don't know if anyone, apart from the most avid Panthers supporter, would have thought that they're going to be the minor premiers. And I can't see them losing again in 2020. So that's the kiss of death that I've just given.
Same. Given them. Thanks, mate. Yeah.
But listen, what do you attribute that to? A couple of questions here. What do you attribute that to, this phenomenal rise? Remember, this time last year, actually it was around 15 last year, I think they were last.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
But it was only a couple of years ago, they sacked a coach, they had them at 4th. It looked like they were in turmoil. It was the first year of Cleary's, Ivan Cleary's contract, and he didn't get them to the finals. They were far from it, actually. Now this turnaround, where's this come from?
Yeah, look, I think he just needed that extra time for Cleary to have the job. Do you know what I mean? I don't think anyone necessarily expected him to walk straight in and turn everything around. But I think everyone expected him to do it slowly. I wouldn't have thought this year either. I would have thought it would have been, because we've got a great roster. I mean, you look at the team sheet. It's an amazing team, and as I sort of say, it's not a team of champions. It is a champion team. You've got really solid blokes who are all playing together. But I think Ivan Cleary has done a terrific job. I just think he's marshalled his troops well. I think the defence has been phenomenal. And as I say, defence wins more games than attack. If you've got a good attacking game, but it's the defence that does it. And they're really playing for each other and playing for Ivan. And I think with the half pairing of Luai and Cleary, they're one of the strongest half pairings in the entire competition. And once they gel, they're unstoppable. They're amazing.
Well, from a non-Penrith supporter, don't get me wrong, I'm happy for Penrith, but just outside looking in, the juniors system is phenomenal. You mentioned
they've always had a great nursery out there. It's been phenomenal. The hard thing out there is keeping the players.
That's what I was going to say. The retention. You've got Matt Burton. How do you keep him?
Well, that's exactly right. There's a whole and Lee Martin as well. All those guys. There's a whole bunch of blokes just coming through. How can we keep those players at the end of the season? And
look, they're great headaches, aren't they? They're good problems to have.
Good problems to have. Absolutely.
Let's go into that. If you're the CEO of Penrith, which player would you sign tomorrow on a 10-year contract?
Possibly. Yeah, good question. I think they actually got him for another 5 years. I would have gone with Crichton. I think he's a sensational player. Young bloke as well. He's still got a bit to learn. Wonga Blake really schooled him when he played Parramatta, when they played Parramatta last time, but he would have learnt from that, and he's played much better since then, since that game. Crichton, I think Luai, obviously, you've got to hang on to him. He's just he's a sensation, and he and Cleary, you've got to keep them together because they've been playing since they were kids. They came up through the nursery together, and so they know each other's games, and I think the more that they play together. That's not more about signing one person, but just keeping those two blokes, I think, in the team, because that'll make a massive difference over the next couple of seasons.
Oh, absolutely. Cleary surprised me, and I think a lot of people, I've always, thought he's a good young player from the outset, but his leadership skills, his mongrel, his toughness that he's showing at the moment, he's leading from the front. Maybe he didn't expose that as much with Maloney there to sort of oversee him, but... That's
right. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think the best thing for Cleary was Maloney going. I think that's really opened him up. He calls the shots now. I think he sort of deferred to Maloney a bit last year. I think he's really composed. I think that's what he's worked on. He's one of the most composed young players I've ever seen on the field, I reckon. Reminds me of Johns and Fittler. So, yeah.
Not that you need it. This is the next question. Not that you need it at all at the moment. Who would you sign from an outside club?
From an outside club? That's a good question. I would actually go with that. I wouldn't. Do you know what I mean? I honestly wouldn't. I think it would be a mistake to bring someone else in. I think it would not. I think it would send the wrong message to the other players in the club. No, if I was CEO, I would say don't do it.
Listen, footy movies. I don't think, as someone who loves movies and also loves footy, obviously, there's been enough. I can look. There's been a few. There's been. You'll be able to tell me a few more, maybe. The Final Winter.
That was the one with Matty Noble. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Based around Newtown's last years in the competition.
That's right.
Footy Legends with Ando.
That's right, yep.
Chasing Comets with Jason Stevens, I believe.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. I did hear about that one. I
enjoyed it. And of course, your movie broke in 2016. Tell us a bit about that, Steve.
Yeah, well, that was about a washed-up ex-rugby league player. He was at top of his game. He got done for match fixing because he was putting all the money in the pokies, just gambling in general. And he's sort of wind up on the street, and a family who happened to be fans of his sort of bump into him on the street and take him into the house and into his family and into their family and try to get him back on the straight and narrow. That came out in 2016, I think it was, 2017. It was quite a good film. It got a fairly good following. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you see any more rugby league movies coming in the near future? I'd love to see some based on, I don't know, a big Origin game or a grand final. I don't know if you remember the movie The Club, the AFL movie.
Of course, David Williamson play. That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I thought that was just I'm not an AFL boy, but I thought something like that, and that leading into the grand final. Here's your opportunity. Penrith go and win the grand final.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think it's sort of been done. I mean, I think people are more interested probably in the human drama. That's what Broke was about. Like we're saying, what happens to a guy when the system chews him up and spits him out? How do you deal with that in a life post rugby league? And we actually spoke to a lot of guys. Spoke to Hindmarsh, Owen Craigie, a few of the guys who had fallen off the rails a little bit and got their stories. And when the movie come out, we did a couple of NRL screenings, and a lot of the guys spoke to us about it, and it was amazing how many players are broken after their careers. They're just lost, got nowhere to go. Do you know what I mean? So I think that kind of thing is more interesting, I think, to the general public than the winning of a grand final or a game. So
I guess it's topical too. You're exactly right. There's a lot of time on young people's, not just young people, but between training and all the other things that you've got to do. I guess that has been something that's been more around. I guess you hear about it a lot more than you did probably 10, 20 years ago. Not to say that it wasn't around.
Well, 20, 30 years ago, the players used to have to work as well. They'd be cellarmen or greenkeepers or whatever. They'd all have jobs. But these guys today, I mean, literally 100 hours of the week, they're doing sweat FA, all this money and too much time in their hands. So.
I think it happens from a younger age too. I think, people are labelled prodigies from 15 or 16 and really don't do a day's work, do they?
No, that's right. Yeah.
Steve, I want to get into the important component of today's show, and that's Beautiful Minds, and that's something that you spent a lot of effort and time with some great people around you. Would you share that with us today, mate?
Yeah, sure. Look, Beautiful Minds are a company that was set up by Marina Pasalaris, and she's pretty much the boss of it. It's an organisation that helps kids mostly sort of from the ages of 10 through to 17 or 18, who are suffering from anxiety, depression, bullying, maybe just kids who are struggling a little bit with life. And they run a whole series of programs in schools, retreats, all sorts of workshops and whatnot, where they've got a good bunch of people like myself, my wife, Pippa Granston, Lauren Eagles on board. Paul Roos is involved as well. There's quite a few high-profile folk who run a variety of workshops and programs to try to help a whole range of kids with a whole range of problems. Ever-changing world. Obviously, with the social media and that, there's a lot of kids struggling with a lot of issues that we didn't sort of have 10, 20 years ago.
Cool.
So we're trying to get a handle on that. Pip and I have got a little program that we've made up for them called Making Yourself Up, which is like an online program. We also go into schools and run it as well, where we just go in and we try to get kids to talk about their dramas, come up with ways of dealing with bullying, dealing with the problems of social media, dealing with depression, anxiety, which, as I say, seems to be so much more of than there was 10 or 20 years ago. So, there's a lot of people spending a lot. We're working with people from Stanford Uni and that as well, just to try to get up, as up to speed and up to date as we can with the best techniques for helping these kids. And it's something that we're quite passionate about, obviously. And we've got an 11-year-old daughter, and we're quite lucky that she doesn't really suffer from those things. But you can see how easy it can happen. And she's about to go into high school, and I think that's when a lot of the shit starts going down too.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's important that people like yourself with the profile and the great people that you have around you are exposing it to the general public. It is out there, and it's becoming, I guess, more prevalent than it was, or certainly that we were led to believe a number of years ago. So fantastic work. And we've got the link there, guys, and all of the information there to Beautiful Minds. So please do make a point of checking that out. Any other things that our audience can do, Steve, apart from that?
Well, not really. No, it's just because we're not looking for donations or anything. It was not a charity necessarily, but we are. If you know of any kids who are struggling, then you can certainly point them or their parents in that direction. There's on the website, I believe. I haven't really gone through it, I have to admit, in any detail, but I believe there's a whole range of different workshops, courses, ideas that and tools that kids can sort of jump on to try to help themselves out. So yeah, that's the Beautiful Minds website. As I say, I'm not entirely sure what's on there. I probably should, but it's well worth having a scroll through.
Absolutely, I've checked it out, and it's really well done, and it's worth having a look at. And as I said, the links are there.
Right.
We'll have all that information on our website as well, folks. All our social media. Lastly, Steve, complete the headline for me. It's an hour after the grand final on all the major sporting sites, Fox Sports and all the rest of it. Tell us the headline of NRL Grand Final 2020. Thanks, mate.
Minor premiers are now premiers.
So you're not referring to my Brisbane Broncos, are you?
Well, and there might be a little byline, Broncos narrowly avoid the wooden spoon.
Mate, thank you for joining us. I know it's a very busy schedule at the moment, Stephen, and look forward to talking to you down the track. Best of luck with the Penrith Panthers, and also best of luck with Beautiful Minds, the great work you're doing there, mate.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on, and good luck to the Broncos.
Cheers, mate. We need it. See you next time.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.